Кои има нови откритија кои ја побиваат традиционалната историска наука? Има ли такво нешто? Постои ли? Каде? На каде оди? Вака сега да влеземе малку во друг трек. Мене многу интересен за обработка.
Well, that's very important, and thanks for bringing that up, because it's actually my research into ancient civilizations and the origins of humankind that led me to the philosophy of Ubuntu and contributionism. So it's all connected. Remember, our history is, we are the product of our history. And if we can't connect the dots, then we're going to be very weak spiritually and mentally and emotionally going into the future. So I try to, in my research and in my work and my presentations, connect the dots and allow people a nice flow of information that paints a picture of ancient human times and how the road that brought us here today has been winding through very, very murky historical waters. And what I find is that, first of all, the history of our planet is much older than we realize or we've been told. And the official history by the mainstream archaeology and historians is a joke. It's pretty much it's a joke. It's pretty much everything we've been told is a lie. Not maybe sometimes not maliciously, but ignorantly. But it's that ignorance that's been proposed as the truth and nothing but the truth. So we got to scrape it clean and start all over again. And I can say this because of my own discoveries in South Africa and Southern Africa. And I think that's probably my great contribution towards ancient civilizations and this discovery of ancient civilizations is the exposing of the stone circles of Southern Africa, which have become known, what we call the stone circles. And this is something that goes back 500 years. This is not something new. You know, when the Portuguese first came around the Cape of Good Hope to India, they started writing about these stone circles, and they asked the local populations who built these things, and they were told, we don't know. And yet that's not what modern historians write. Modern historians claim that then they know exactly who built these stone circles and when and how, while the Portuguese tell us very clearly that the people then didn't know when they came from. And then I started discovering that these stone circles, there are a lot more of them than we realize. And this has been a fascination with historians and archaeologists for 500 years now. And so basically my discovery has been that there are more than 10 million of these mysterious stone structures in Southern Africa. Not just
10 million structures.
Yes, not just a few thousand. There have been various books written about it and numbers given. And one book from the 70s suggested that there were about 20,000 of these stone circular structures. And already 20,000 is a lot. You know, when I started researching this in 2005, I thought 20,000 stone circles. Wow, this is really Indiana Jones country, you know. And I was way short of the real number. By the time I got involved and started researching this in 2007, I realized very quickly that the numbers are much larger than anyone could ever have imagined. More than 10 million of these structures scattered through South Africa, Botswana, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, but mostly South Africa and Zimbabwe. That's where the concentration is. And then you start getting the relationships and the correlation between the Sumerian texts and what's happening in South Africa, or what the Sumerian texts refer to as the Abzu, where the gold came from. And guess what? That's where the gold comes from. So the gold came from and still comes from today. And but then the research goes into even more strange areas. Is when I made the interesting discovery that the stone circles were not dwellings. They had some other mysterious origin and original reason why they were structured. Many of the archaeological research that was done by universities and archaeological groups, several of them make statements that the original structures had no doors or entrances. Now, that is a very important statement. If it's a stone circle with no doors or entrances, then you have to, there's only one conclusion that you have to reach, or one very important conclusion, is that these were not dwellings for animals or for people. And if they were not dwellings for animals or people, then what were they? And yet all our archaeologists today at universities, they keep saying that these were built by people as dwellings and homes or cattle enclosures to keep your cattle in.
But without doors.
But without doors and entrances. So,
roofs?
Yeah, and so when I made this discovery, I made this discovery at the same time that I realized that the stones that make up these stone circles have strong acoustic properties, and when you pick some of them up, they ring beautiful, they ring like bells. And if you go onto YouTube, you'll see me showing some of these beautiful stones that ring like bells. And I realized this is not about dwellings, it's about sound.
Signal.
Sound as a source of energy. And that's where my research really exploded.
As a source of energy.
As a source of energy. What I found is that each stone circle is actually an energy generating device that resonates, and every stone circle is unique. And that was another big thing. It's like, why are they all different? Everyone is completely unique. And when I realized that the stones that make up the walls have strong acoustic properties and they ring like bells, I realized that this is to do with sound and sound resonance and frequency and the generation of energy. We measured very strong frequencies of between 14 gigahertz up to beyond 375 gigahertz emanating out of the stone circles, and specifically at Adam's Calendar, which is an ancient site, an ancient astronomical observatory site, which is much more than an observatory. It's actually a powerful energy generating site that, that's a whole another debate for another 3 or 4 hours. but all these stone circles, the sand makes these beautiful patterns, and every sound frequency has a very specific, unique shape for that sound frequency. And that's exactly what these stone circles are. And they're not standing alone. They're connected to each other by these channels. They look like roads when you look at them from the aerial photographs. So when I started analyzing this, you look at these channels that connect them together. They know doors and entrances, and then all these channels that look like roads that connect all the circles together. Our historians and archaeologists in South Africa say that these roads, these channels were created as roads so they could drive the cattle, could walk the cattle in these roads, which is just such a nonsensical statement to make.